A monk wakes before sunrise on a small island off the English coast. He has lived here for 20 years. He will be dead before noon. He does not know this yet. None of them do. It is the 8th of June, 793 AD. The monastery on Lindisfarne holds gold crosses, silver chalices, and manuscripts decorated with jewels. Monks have lived here in peace since the year 635. They keep no weapons. They have no walls. The nearest army is days away on the mainland. In 150 years, not a single act of violence has touched this place. That changes in the next hour. 3 ships appear on the horizon. They move fast, driven by dozens of oars striking the water in unison. Their sails are dark. At the front of each hull, a carved wooden serpent stares forward with hollow eyes. The men on board carry axes, swords, and round-painted shields. They have crossed the North Sea for something very specific. They know exactly what is inside this monastery, and they know no one is protecting it. The ships reach the shallows just after dawn. Armed men pour onto the sand and move toward the buildings without hesitation. The monastery doors are broken open from the outside. A monk clutching a wooden cross is cut down in the entrance. Gold is ripped from the altars. Silver is stuffed into leather sacks. Manuscripts that took decades to complete are thrown to the floor. The only thing worth taking is the metal on their covers. By midday, the island is silent again. Smoke lifts from the ruins. The tide washes blood from the sand. The ships are already gone, vanished east into open sea. No one in England knows where these men came from. No one knows why they chose this place. And no one has any idea that this is only the beginning. The men who destroyed Lindisfarne did not come from a powerful empire. They had no written language, no cities, no central government. They came from the frozen edges of northern Europe, a stretch of coastline so harsh that farming alone could not keep a family alive. The growing season lasted barely 4 months. What little farmland existed was already claimed by chieftains and passed down to their eldest sons. A second son inherited nothing. A third son did not even have a name worth remembering. So these men built ships instead. And their ships changed everything. A single longship could carry 70 warriors across open ocean, navigate a river shallow enough to wade through, and still be light enough for 8 men to lift it over land and drop it into the next waterway. Nothing else on Earth could do this. No army could predict where they would appear, because they could appear anywhere. For decades, they had raided each other, Norwegian crews striking Danish villages, Danish crews pushing into Swedish territory. But by the late 700s, word had reached the harbours of Scandinavia about an island to the southwest, a place called England. It was rich. Its monasteries overflowed with gold and silver. Its kingdoms were divided, 4, sometimes 5 rival kings, too busy fighting each other to guard their own coastline. And it was close enough to reach in a few days with a good wind. The raid on Lindisfarne was not an accident. It was a test, and England had just failed it. The year after Lindisfarne, they hit the monastery at Jarrow. The year after that, the coast of Scotland, then Ireland, then the trading towns along the English Channel. Each summer, the pattern repeated. Ships arrived in spring when the seas calmed. Crews raided through the warm months, targeting monasteries, ports, and river settlements. By autumn, they were gone, sailing home with everything they could carry. England had no navy, no coastal defences, and no single king with the authority to organise a response. The country was split into rival kingdoms, Northumbria, Mercia, East Anglia, and Wessex, and each one assumed the problem belonged to someone else. So the raids grew bolder. By the 830s, Viking fleets were no longer arriving in 3s and 4s. They came in dozens. They stopped targeting only monasteries and began attacking entire towns. They sailed up rivers that no one believed could be navigated, appearing deep inland with no warning. In 842, they struck London itself, burning much of the city and withdrawing before any army could respond. Then, something shifted. In the 800s and 50s, for the first time, Viking crews began spending the winter on English soil. They no longer came just to raid. They were building camps, establishing supply routes, testing which kingdoms would fight and which would crumble. The English did not understand what they were watching. They thought these were raids getting worse. They were not raids, they were rehearsals. In the autumn of 865 AD, a fleet larger than anything England had ever seen landed on the eastern coast. The men on board were not here to steal treasure and leave. They were here to conquer. In the autumn of 865 AD, a fleet of several hundred longships landed on the coast of East Anglia. The army that stepped off those ships was unlike anything England had faced before. These were not summer raiders. This was a coordinated invasion force. Thousands of warriors, drawn from across Scandinavia, united under a single purpose. They brought horses, weapons, supplies, and the intention to stay for as long as it took. They did not attack East Anglia immediately. Instead, they made a deal. The local king gave them horses, food, and shelter in exchange for peace. It was not peace, it was preparation. The following spring, the army rode north, straight for Northumbria. They chose their moment perfectly. The kingdom was in the middle of a civil war, two rival kings fighting each other for the throne. The Vikings arrived while both armies were distracted and captured the city of York without a proper battle. Northumbria, the most powerful kingdom in northern England, fell in less than a year. Next came East Anglia. The same kingdom that had given them horses now tried to resist. Their king was captured, tied to a tree, and killed with arrows. His kingdom was absorbed overnight. Then Mercia, the great central kingdom. Its cities were taken one by one. Its king fled the country entirely. What had taken generations to build was dismantled in a single campaign season. By 871 AD, 3 of England's 4 kingdoms had been destroyed or conquered. Every major city north of the Thames was under Viking control. Churches were burned or converted into feasting halls. Local lords either swore loyalty to the invaders or disappeared. One kingdom remained: Wessex, the last surviving Saxon territory. Its old king had just died, and the crown had passed to his youngest brother, a 21-year-old with no battlefield experience who had spent most of his youth reading books and studying scripture. He was the only thing standing between the Vikings and total conquest of England, and he had just lost his first battle. For 7 years, the young king of Wessex did something no one expected. He survived. While the Viking army tore through the rest of England, he fought a grinding war of small battles and temporary truces. He lost men. He lost territory. He paid silver to buy time when there was no other option. But he did not fall. Then, in the winter of 878 AD, the Vikings launched a surprise attack on his stronghold at Chippenham. It came during the Christmas feast, when his guard was down and most of his army had gone home. The assault was devastating. Wessex collapsed almost overnight. The king escaped with a handful of men into the marshes of Somerset, a landscape of fog, shallow water, and dense reed beds that the Vikings could not navigate. For weeks he lived in hiding. No throne, no army, no kingdom, just a fugitive crouching in the wetlands while the people who had sworn loyalty to him were surrendering one village at a time. This was the lowest point in the history of Saxon England. Every kingdom had fallen. Every king was dead, exiled, or captured. The entire country was one bad week away from becoming a permanent Viking territory. And then, from the swamp, a message went out. The The king sent riders to every corner of Wessex, calling free men to a meeting point at a place called Egbert's Stone. He had no guarantee that anyone would come. His kingdom had been shattered. His name carried no power anymore. They came anyway. Thousands of them. Farmers, craftsmen, minor lords, men who had been hiding in their own villages, waiting for someone to tell them the fight was not over. 7 weeks later, this reassembled army met the full Viking force at the Battle of Edington. The fighting lasted an entire day. By nightfall, the Viking line had broken. Their army retreated to a fortified camp. After 2 weeks under siege, they surrendered. England did not win the war that day, but it stopped losing. The treaty that followed divided the country in two. The north and east, everything the Vikings already held, became known as the Danelaw. The south and west remained Saxon, under the rule of a king who had rebuilt his kingdom from a hiding place in a swamp. He was the only English ruler in history who would ever be called the Great. For the next 40 years, England existed as two separate countries sharing one island. The south and west were Saxon. Churches stood. Latin was spoken by priests and scholars. Farmers worked land that had been in their families for generations. Life was ordered, Christian, and familiar. The north and east were something else entirely. In the Danelaw, Old English estates were divided among Scandinavian settlers who brought their own language, their own gods, and their own way of settling disputes. Villages that had once answered to Saxon lords now operated under Norse law, where a man's reputation was decided not by his bloodline, but by the oath of his neighbours. The two cultures bled into each other slowly. Saxon merchants learned enough Norse to trade in York. Danish farmers married local women and baptized their children. Towns that had been burned during the invasion were rebuilt with a mixture of English stone and Scandinavian timber. Even the language began to merge. Hundreds of everyday English words used today, from sky to knife to window, entered the language during this period. It was not a peaceful coexistence. It was an uneasy one. Both sides knew it could not last. And in the south, the heirs of the great king were already making plans to take it all back. The great king died in 899 AD. He left behind a kingdom that was battered but unbroken, and a family that had no intention of settling for half a country. His son took the throne of Wessex and immediately began pushing north. Town by town, fortress by fortress, he reclaimed territory that had been under Viking control for a generation. He did not do it alone. His eldest daughter had married the Lord of Mercia. When her husband died, she did not step aside. She took command of the Mercian army herself, building fortifications, planning campaigns, and leading assaults on Viking strongholds across the Midlands. Saxon chronicles recorded her victories alongside those of any king. In a world that expected women to mourn and withdraw, she became one of the most effective military commanders England had ever produced. Between brother and sister, the Danelaw was shrinking year by year. Viking lords who had ruled English towns for decades were being pushed back toward the sea. Some fought, some negotiated, some simply abandoned their holdings and sailed north. By 927 AD, the next generation had finished the job. The great king's grandson marched into York, the last major Viking stronghold in England, and claimed it without a fight. For the first time in history, a single ruler controlled everything from the Scottish border to the English Channel. England did not exist as a concept before the Viking invasion. It was 4 separate kingdoms that rarely cooperated. The crisis that nearly destroyed them is exactly what forced them to become one country. But the story was not over. The North still remembered its Viking roots. And across the sea, Scandinavia was watching. For 50 years after the Reconquest, England held together. The Viking threat seemed to belong to a previous century. A new generation had grown up knowing nothing but peace. Then, in 980 AD, the longships returned. This time, They were not disorganized war bands looking for easy targets. These were professional armies, backed by Scandinavian kings, equipped with better weapons, larger fleets, and a clear political objective. They did not want treasure, they wanted the country. The English king had no answer. Rather than fight, he chose to pay. Enormous sums of silver, tens of thousands of pounds, were handed over in exchange for the Vikings leaving. The payments were called Danegeld. It did not work. The silver only proved that England was rich and its leadership was weak. Every payment bought a few months of peace before the next fleet arrived demanding more. In desperation, the king made a decision that would haunt England for a generation. On the 13th of November 1002 AD, he ordered the killing of every Dane living on English soil. Men, women and children, settlers who had lived in England for decades, were hunted down and murdered in a single coordinated massacre. Among the dead was the sister of the most powerful king in Scandinavia. The response was total war. A Scandinavian invasion force tore through England with a brutality that made the First Viking Age look restrained. By 1013 AD, the English king had fled the country entirely. England had fallen, for the second time, to a Viking army. And then something no one predicted happened. The conqueror's son, who inherited the English throne at the age of 18, did not rule like an invader. He married an English noblewoman. He adopted English customs. He rebuilt the churches his father had burned. He governed so effectively that within a decade, the English no longer saw him as a foreign king. They saw him as one of the greatest rulers they had ever had. In September of 1066 AD, the last great Viking fleet crossed the North Sea and landed in northern England. It carried over 300 ships and nearly 10,000 warriors, led by a Scandinavian king who believed the English throne belonged to him. The English king gathered his army and marched north at a speed that should not have been possible. In 5 days, he covered almost 200 miles on foot, arriving before the invaders even knew he had left the south. The two armies met at Stamford Bridge on the 25th of September. It was a slaughter. The Viking force, caught off guard and separated from their armor, was destroyed almost completely. Their king was killed. Out of 300 ships that had sailed to England, fewer than 30 carried survivors home. The Viking Age in Britain was over. 273 years of raids, invasions, kingdoms rising and falling, and the longest struggle in English history ended on a single afternoon beside a river in Yorkshire. But the man who won that battle never got to celebrate it. 3 days after Stamford Bridge, a message arrived from the south. Another army had landed on the English coast. This one was not Viking. It was Norman, led by a duke from northern France who also claimed the English throne. The exhausted English army turned around and marched 250 miles south in less than 2 weeks. On the 14th of October, they met the Norman force at a ridge near the town of Hastings. By nightfall, the English king was dead. His army was broken. The crown passed to a foreign ruler for the second time in 50 years. The Viking Age did not fade away quietly. It ended on a battlefield and took Saxon England with it. 2 centuries of war, 4 fallen kingdoms, 1 country forged in the fire of invasion, and a legacy that is still woven into the language, the laws, and the land of modern Britain. If this story moved you, subscribe to this channel. There are more lost worlds waiting to be rebuilt.